Hi friends, today it's Transfiguration Sunday and I'm going to share my sermon for the day. The scriptures are from Exodus 24, 12 to 18 and Matthew 17, verse 1 to 9. So feel free to have a read of those, then come back to the video. I wonder, have you ever been up a mountain? What do you remember about what it feels like being up a mountain? What I remember is that the air is really clear, it feels invigorating. It's a lot of work getting up there. You can see for such a long way whilst you're up there too. Jesus took 3 of his closest friends up a mountain, and in their society, in ancient Jewish culture, they had stories about ancestors going up mountains. They expected that when you went up a mountain, weird things might happen. Their ancestors used to build temples on the mountains because they believed mountains were close to heaven. That's where you might have a divine experience. And they had one ancestor, Moses, who had gone up a mountain, and when he came back, he looked strange, like his face was shining. And he had some carved slabs of stone with instructions on them about how they should live, given to them by God. Another ancestor had gotten himself into a lot of trouble. He had done a whole lot of very frightening and violent things in the name of God. And he'd run away up the mountain to escape from the authorities afterwards. And God met him there. Elijah had done all of these violent things to his enemies, and he experienced a lot of violent, frightening things on the mountain, like an earthquake, a storm, a fire, but he doesn't sense God's presence in those violent phenomena. At that moment, he experiences God's presence in the silence. So when Jesus and his 3 followers are going up the mountain, they might have all of these kinds of stories in mind and other stories of divine encounters that happen on mountains. And what they see is something strange and spooky, an encounter with their long departed ancestors. And Jesus is there talking with them as though they're familiar. Moses is back there on the mountain and Elijah has returned to the mountain with Jesus. It makes me wonder, is this time travel? Have they been whisked out of their timeline? Is this how they encountered God on the mountain? Was it Jesus? One of Jesus' followers says, "We should stay here and set up a camp for you." But the divine voice interrupts and claims Jesus as God's son. And Jesus leads them back down the mountain, back to normal life, back where they're needed. They need to bring their experience back down to normal life. When I hear this story at the moment, it makes me think about wanting to retreat from society, wanting to escape up a mountain or escape into some kind of holy place where we're not impacted by the violent and hateful things that we're hearing about and that we're seeing and that we're experiencing. When we see and hear about frightening things happening in the world, we might feel like we need to retreat from the world. And we do need to retreat. We do need to get away so that we can reflect and worship, and so we can encourage each other in our walk of discipleship in the world. We need to retreat so that we can have our faith instructed and inspired, but we're not meant to establish a permanent camp apart from the world. If the things happening in the world frighten us, we need to make sure that we don't retreat into those safe places and stay there to avoid the danger. When we go up the mountain to encounter God and worship, we need to go back down to the city to continue following the way of life that God has shown us. For Christians, this means loving God and loving our neighbour. If we love God, we can't help loving our neighbour because our neighbour is made in the image of God. Martin Niemöller was a leader of the Lutheran Church in Germany when the Nazis were taking over, and he had a lot of regrets about how he responded when frightening things were happening in his country. He said that when they came for the communists, he didn't say anything because he wasn't a communist. He didn't trust communists because communists had conflict with the church. And he said that when they came for the trade unionists, he didn't say anything because he wasn't a trade unionist. And he didn't say anything when they came for the socialists either, because he wasn't a socialist. He was actually quite supportive of the Nazis taking those people away who he didn't agree with. So he saw the government as doing a good service. And when they came for the Jews, people of another religion, he didn't say anything because he wasn't a Jew. Niemöller believed that Jews needed to become Christians, that they had rejected Christ and they needed to become part of the church to be saved. And so Niemöller didn't speak up until he realised that the Nazis were still going to take Jews away who had become Christians. When Niemöller did speak up, the Nazis came for him and they came for other Christians who spoke too. And he said that when the Nazis came for him, no one spoke up because no one who would have spoken up was left to speak up. So we might say when we hear about frightening things happening in our society, like when terrorists shot Jewish people in Sydney, we might say, it doesn't affect me because I'm not Jewish. If I keep quiet, I'll be left alone. We might want to say those people who a terrorist tried to bomb in Perth on the national holiday when they were having a march, they were Aboriginal and I'm not Aboriginal, so it doesn't really affect me. If I keep quiet about it, maybe I'll be okay and no one will bother me. We might want to say those people who were attacked while they were praying, they were Muslim and I'm not Muslim, so it doesn't affect me. I'm not going to make a fuss about it and hopefully I'll be left alone. But we might find that this is what happens when we get targeted too, that everyone has been too frightened and no one's going to speak up. We don't have to repeat that kind of history. We're learning from the history. I've been encouraged to see how many people are standing up and speaking up when they see that their neighbour is being attacked or mistreated, whether it's Jews or Muslims or Aboriginal people or migrants or another group that's being targeted. We as Christians are called to find ways to support our neighbours because Jesus taught us to love our neighbours, even when we don't see things the same way as them, even when we're sometimes in conflict. We've still got to find ways to try to treat them with love. Let's not retreat from the world when things get scary. Let's not try to retreat up the mountain or into the church. Instead, let's make it a pattern that when we retreat to be with God and to be nourished, that we then return refreshed to the world, ready to find ways to love our neighbours.